Welcome to Bhakti Sangha Japa conference call. We are very fortunate to have His Grace Nitya Krishna prabhuji on the call today to enlighten us on Srimad Bhagavatam 4.23.23 onwards. Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for joining and giving your valuable time and association this morning. You can take over the call, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad Pranam, all goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you for this opportunity. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritta Naram Chava Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Mudiriye. Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Dhamma Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna everyone. So thank you for this opportunity to speak on the most glorious Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic knowledge, and beg the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis that we can have a nice discussion today. So today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 23, texts 23, 24, and 25. The title of the chapter is Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home. So I'll read the Sanskrit and the translations for 23 and 24, and then we'll do the Sanskrit word for word translation and purport for 25, as there are no purports for 23 and 24. So, Vilokya anugatam sadvim pritum vidavaram patim tushtubur varadadever deva patna sahasrataha. After observing this brave act, performed by the chaste wife, Archi, the wife of the great King Prithu, many thousands of wives of demigods, along with their husbands, offered prayers to the queen, for they were very much satisfied. Text 24. Kurvatya kutamasaram tasmim mandara sanuni nandasa amalaturishu gananti sma parasparam. At that time, the demigods were situated on top of the Mandara hill, and all their wives began to shower flowers on the funeral pyre, and began to talk amongst themselves as follows. Text number 25. Devya uchuhu aho iyam vadurtanya yachaivam buhubhujam patim sarvatmana patim beje Yagnesham Shirvaduriva. Devya Uchu, the wives of the demigod said, Aho, alas, Iyam, this, Vadu, the wife, Danya, most glorious, Ya, who, Cha, also, Evam, as, Bhu, of the world, Budam, of all the kings, Patim, the king, Sarva Atmana, with full understanding, Patim, unto the husband, Veje, worshipped, Yagna Isham, unto Lord Vishnu, Shriya, the goddess of fortune, Vadhu, wife, Eva, life. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The wives of the demigod said, all glories to Queen Archi. We can see that this queen of the great King Prithu, the emperor of all kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yagnesha, or Vishnu. Purport. In this verse, the words Yagnesham Shrirvaduriva indicate that Queen Archi served her husband just as the goddess of fortune served the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. We can observe that even in the history of this world, when Lord Krishna, the Supreme Vishnu, was ruling over Dwarka, Queen Rukmini was the chief of all Krishna's queens. used to serve Lord Krishna personally in spite of having many hundreds of maidservants to assist her. Similarly, the goddess of fortune in the Vaikuntha planets also serves Narayana personally, although there are many thousands of devotees prepared to serve the Lord. This practice is also followed by the wives of the demigods. And in the days past, the wives of men also followed the same principles. In Vedic civilization, the husband and wife were not separated by such man-made laws as divorce. We should understand that the necessity for maintaining family life in human society and should thus abolish this artificial law known as divorce. The husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmini. In this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dharati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sadhuratam Sahagana Lagunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paridana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padantagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanta Nagaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Krupa Sindhu Vevacha Patitana Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So once again, thank you for this opportunity and beg the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, including my mother and father who I'm in the company of here, so beg their blessings as well. So we're continuing this discussion, the most glorious pastimes of King Prithu, and these pastimes are coming to an end. And so this chapter again is entitled Maharaja's Prithu's going back home, and he has now left this world, and we are hearing the glories of his wife, Queen Archie. But we've seen extraordinary qualities of Prithu Maharaj throughout these pastimes, so many dimensions showing us the ideal king life and ideal qualities. He showed great restraint and forgiveness in his interactions with Lord Indra. He showed great intelligence in asking for the boon of having millions of ears so he can hear about Krishna from the mouths of the pure devotees. He showed great detachment from all the opulences and even the praise from the reciters. He showed great care for his citizens, like his own children, instructing them to worship the Supreme Lord, not him as the king, but actually to worship the Supreme Lord. He showed great humility, enthusiasm in receiving the four Kumaras and hearing from them. And so we've seen, more recently, the great austerity he endured by entering into the Vanaprastha ashram. And here in this section, we get the great opportunity and fortune to glorify Queen Archie, who was performing great service and endured unusual circumstances, not being accustomed, being a queen, to her feet not even having touched the ground before, now living and sleeping on the bare forest floors and enduring all the austerities that Prithu Maharaj had endured. And after Prithu Maharaj had left, performing the funeral rites. And so we see, the great qualities, and so great is her activities that thousands of demigods and their wives have assembled to shower flowers, and in the coming verses will begin to glorify her. So this is the great position we can always see and evaluate by the reaction of others, and clearly her activities have drawn the attention of thousands of devatas and their wives to see and glorify this great activity. So we're very fortunate to also have the opportunity to glorify the great queen of Prithu Maharaj. So I'll just read the verse again, 25th verse. The wives of the demigod said, "All glories to Queen Urchi." We see that this queen of the great King Prithu, the emperor of all kings of the world, has served her husband with mind, speech, and body, exactly as the goddess of fortune serves the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yagnesha or Vishnu. So the theme of today's discussion is going to be service. And, well, we can say that is the theme of all discussions in Krishna consciousness. What else is there to discuss but our eternal position as servant of Krishna? We have to serve, and actually every living entity in the whole of creation, both materially and spiritually, they are all engaged in service. There is no escape. That is actually the intrinsic nature of every living entity. And so we only have one of two choices. Either I'm going to serve Krishna's senses, or I'm going to serve my own senses. That is my only option. And when we think we are a master, all we are is actually a slave, a servant slave to our senses. So this service is critical. And we know even in the spiritual world, it is full of service. All the devotees are fully engaged in serving Krishna. And what is Krishna engaged in? Serving his devotees. His whole existence is to give happiness to his devotees. The whole existence of the devotees is to give happiness to Krishna. So this service aspect, it is the universal theme, again, in both the material and spiritual creation. So we'll talk about this today. And in the activities of Queen Urchi, we see her great service to her husband. Very chaste and dedicated service was so wonderful that it put her on an airplane back home to Godhead. It's coming up in a couple of verses. And so the Vedic principle that's being explained here and in a couple of prior verses is that the wife should faithfully and sincerely serve the husband. And as soon as we make that statement, it invokes some emotions, no matter who we are, from what perspective we may be. There is some reaction to this principle. The reaction is either, no way, that's not fair, why? Or maybe the reaction is, yes, that's what I've been saying all along, depending on our perspective. But this reaction to this principle is there. And so the goal today I have is that we can explore the subject of this relationship of marriage. And a whole industry has grown to serve this institution, from how to find a match to the actual process, to maybe the biggest of all industries is how to, make marriage a happy existence. And the conclusion Srila Prabhupada gives in this purport is that the only means to achieve happiness in marriage is through Krishna consciousness, right? And he gives the example that the husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan, Krishna, Rukmini. So we can discuss three things I thought today. First, this principle of the Vedic principle of the role of husband and the role of wife and how they lead to perfection. And then we can discuss a little bit about the duty of each. There is the recipient of service and there is the giver of service. So what is the duty of each? Right? So, and then finally, the pastime of Krishna and Rukmini from the 10th canto. So we can discuss this pastime of Krishna and Rukmini that is referenced here. So we'll discuss those three things. So, these Vedic principles, first and foremost, we have to always remember they are perfect rules and guidance of how to live and achieve a perfect life. And perfect life means that one finds eternal peace and happiness. So they take us from wherever we are, no matter how conditioned our position. Hello, Hare Krishna. Is it back?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, it went on hold for a second. So, okay, so the Vedic principles, they are perfect rules and regulations to help us achieve perfection of life. And the principles are always right. And when we hear them, though, sometimes we have these doubts. You know, we have, does it still apply? How is this right? But if we dig into them and really understand these Vedic principles, we'll see how they are absolutely perfect, and they bring about a wonderful existence, not only for ourselves, but for all of those around us. Right? So, and that is true of all Vedic principles. And then specifically today we'll discuss this principle that's being discussed of the conduct of husband and wife. A bit of a tricky subject. I guess I'm thankful I'm halfway around the world for my own wife, so maybe she won't be laughing at me too much in trying to speak on this topic. But we'll only speak what has been spoken by our previous acharyas in this topic, and as setting a means for how one could, live in this way. So the principle here that's being explained is that the wife is meant to faithfully serve the husband, and the husband is meant to faithfully serve and protect the wife. And immediately, again, we have some consternation, some issues, maybe some questions, and our material conditioning is so strong that we lose sense of right from wrong, and what seems right is actually wrong, and what seems wrong is actually right. And we see this through so many acts of our exploration of Krishna consciousness. So sometimes, these principles, a little bewildering, but, if we evaluate, and I was just thinking about another topic, but, the purpose of work, just to give a parallel, we see in society there's so much emphasis on work and profession and career, but if we go back and think about the purpose of work, the purpose that any mankind has endeavored for work is to provide some means for the family to exist nicely, to serve and protect the family. That is the purpose of work. But if we see today, are we making decisions about our careers based on that? What is good for my family? Instead, we see this choice being made based on what is good for my ego, for my position in society, for maybe my sense of self-worth. But instead, if we remember, the real purpose of going to work in the first place is to provide for family. So like this, many of these activities become lost. So, this purpose and the activity of marriage has also become quite misconstrued and contaminated to the point where the original institution of marriage is virtually unrecognizable in society today. So, and we can settle one thing very clearly. The current wisdom of what it takes to be a happy and peaceful relationship isn't working. The divorce rate today is well over 50% around the world. So whatever conventional wisdom says about, going on nice vacations together, or buying expensive jewelry during the holidays, or, doing some, group fitness activities, or whatever ideas are given around how to make a very nice, husband-wife relationship, it's clearly not working. Because we see in the end this high divorce rate. And even the concept of divorce, as Prabhupada says, it is a man-made law. It is not a Vedic injunction. Because in the Vedic injunction, there's no even concept of separation between husband and wife. So this man-made law is there. So we can see that it's clear that the current conventional wisdom is not working. So let us explore then this Vedic principle and what the Vedic wisdom tells us about this, successful relationship. And the situation is so bad today that even the idea of finding a perfect and peaceful marriage seems impossible. Because we've gone so far away, it seems like a fanciful dream, right? But again, these Vedic principles are always right. So, and they have to be understood and applied in totality, completely. We cannot pick and choose certain aspects of it and think, oh, wife serves husband, great, and then husband tries to exploit. No, there are requirements on both sides of the equation, and we can discuss that a little bit. But if we see the overarching principle of marriage, Krishna in the 10th canto, 60th chapter, will read a little bit from this pastime of Rukmini and Krishna. He makes a very important point that this marriage, it is a relationship of equals. He says, I'm just going to read this verse from, again, this is the 15th verse, quote, marriage and friendship are proper between two people who are equal in terms of their wealth, birth, influence, physical appearance, and capacity for good progeny, but never between a superior and an inferior. So again, Krishna is stating here that marriage is proper when it is an equal relationship. Of course, Krishna is making this point in a mood of jest that we'll talk about a little bit later. But the ultimate equality is there, and the ultimate and the end equality is that both husband and wife are meant to serve. As I mentioned in the very opening, every living entity is equipped with this constitutional activity to serve. It is the intrinsic nature. But both husband and wife are meant to serve. It is not a one-way street, and there is service throughout. So the Vedic principle, the guideline, is that the husband serves Guru and Krishna, and the wife serves husband. And in this way, both are directly connected to the service of Krishna and Guru. And when this statement is made, there's also sometimes some wonder about, well, what is the position of wife in her service if she is serving husband but not Guru and Krishna? And again, in our Vedic principles, we see that the Vedic principles enjoin that the wife gets 50% of all service performed by the husband. Not 49%, not 40%, not 25%, but exactly 50%. There is equality even in that formula. Okay? And so this is the method. And we see Queen Archie, by serving Prithu Maharaj, we have proof positive. What was the result for her? She is also aboard a spiritual airplane going back home, back to Godhead. Okay? So this is the principle and the formula that exists. It is a relationship of equals, and even the spiritual credits earned by the husband are split right down the middle, 50-50. Right? And we know in the spiritual world there is this dynamic of how the servant is conquering the beloved, the master. Right? Krishna is conquered by the love of his devotees. Rupa Goswami explains in the Nectar of Devotion that the characteristics of prema bhakti, the last characteristic is Sri Krishna Karshani, that Krishna gives himself to his devotees, who binds them by their pure love. This is the power of pure devotional service. So Srila Prabhupada comments often in the Srimad Bhagavatam that marriage has this similar principle, that the very chaste and dedicated service of the wife actually brings the husband under control, and that all of the desires are fulfilled. So this is how one actually fulfills. It is not by asserting dominance, but it is by rendering great service. And the husband of character, meaning very important that the husband must be of good character, is then impelled and inspired to reciprocate. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we see that is the position that actually of the servant becomes the controller through this faithful service. So again, the principle is perfect. And now let us spend a little bit of time exploring both the receiver and the giver of service. So in service, it's always a two-way street. It's not one-sided. There is a responsibility of the recipient, and there's a responsibility of the giver or the renderer of service. Both are there, right? So in this formula, both the giver and the recipient have to be working together and have to be capable to render a good outcome. Both have to be capable. Just if one is off or one is not capable, then it does not work. Just using an analogy, if you have a piece of wood and you have a lighter, between the two, they can combine to create fire. But if you have a lighter, but you have the wood that is very wet and damp, no matter how good your lighter is, it will not create fire. Or conversely, you may have very good dry wood, but if your lighter is not very capable, it will not create fire. So in order for it to happen, both have to be of good quality and good character in order for success to happen. So similarly, in the same way, in the marriage, both husband and wife have to be of good character and quality. Then the success can happen. So we'll talk a little bit about the recipient of service. And the recipient of service actually has a great responsibility. One cannot just take service freely. There must be a reciprocation. In order to receive the service, one must be qualified. Just like, for an example, in order to receive some boiling water, you must have a very capable receptacle to take that water. If you try to take that boiling water in your hands, it will not work. If you try to take that boiling water in a leaf cup, it will not work. If you try to take it in a steel pot, it will work. So the recipient of that water must be qualified in order for it to work. So, someone needs to go on mute. There's quite a bit of background noise. Okay. So the recipient's quality and qualification is very, very important. So similarly, the husband must be very qualified in order to receive the service of wife. Unfortunately, husband focuses often just on the service of wife, but is not thinking introspectively, what is my qualification to receive that service? So the first and foremost is that the husband must be able to maintain and provide and protect and support the wife. And the living entity, an intelligent jiva understands that there is only one maintainer, and that is Krishna. The only way to be saved and to be protected is to surrender to Krishna. Actually, one of the 6 principles of Sharanagati that Bhaktivinoda Thakur discusses is to know that Krishna is my only maintainer. So in order for the husband to maintain wife, the husband must be engaged in devotional service. Otherwise, there is no means, no ability to protect and maintain, because Krishna is the ultimate protector and the only protector. Right? So the main qualification to receive service is that the husband must be a surrendered devotee to Krishna, must be situated in pure devotional service. And then the husband must have these devotional qualities which arise out of service. Must be loving and caring, very tolerant, a controlled mind and senses, no anger, no pride. Because when such a situation is there, then that faithful and chaste service does not lead to an exploitative nature, but instead leads to the prescribed result according to this Vedic principle, which is a very peaceful and loving relationship. So again, to receive this service, the recipient must be very, very strong. And ultimately, all the service is reciprocated. Krishna reciprocates with our service. So the husband must be prepared to reciprocate that service. And if we want to, very vividly see this reciprocation, just rewind, a canto prior and reread the pastime of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, and how Kardama Muni has so elaborately reciprocated with the service is described there very, very nicely. So this is the responsibility of the recipient of the service. One must be of great quality, great character, and engaged in devotional service fully in order to be able to provide this position. And then the giver of service. And this we speak of a lot because it relates to all living entities. It is all of our eternal position to serve. It is our swadharma to be the servant. But in this relationship specifically of serving husband, it is an opportunity, to learn to surrender our ego. It takes a a bit of an opportunity to smash our ego in order to be able to render this type of service. And there's a great opportunity, just like the disciple, surrenders to Guru, and the Guru is accepting that service as a means to teach the disciple how to ultimately surrender to Krishna. The Guru is not looking for service to him. He is looking to teach how to surrender and serve to Krishna. So in this way, there's a similar corollary. And the service requires, it should be done with, it's called chaste service. Chaste means pure, with pure purpose, virtuous, not with an ulterior motive, and just like we see in pure devotional service. So this is the relationship between both the provider of the service and the recipient. Both have to be qualified and carry on. And when it's done, then a very wonderful formula takes place. Just wanted to comment before we discuss a little bit about the pastime of Krishna and Rukmini, the mood of the pure devotee and in receiving service. I heard in one class a very beautiful statement. I'm sad and I don't remember who said it, but he said that receiving service is a service in itself. And it struck me that, to receive service is actually a service. It's a very powerful statement because a devotee is very fearful to receive service. A materialist is eager to be served. Who will serve me? Who will serve me? But a devotee is very cautious because he's worried that pride may enter when there is service. Right? So this natural characteristic we see amongst pure devotees is that there is a reluctance to accept service. Loknath Goswami showed this beautifully when Narottam Das Thakur was rendering this very menial service of cleaning the area after he was passing stool, and ordinarily we think, wow, if someone is rendering that service, great, I don't have to do it. But the character Loknath, he was very troubled to see who was rendering that service, and then head back to find out who. So you see throughout this that there is a reluctance to accept service. Yet we see that the great devotees, they do accept service, and they do it as a service to Krishna. As I mentioned, the spiritual master. The spiritual master will accept service of a disciple, but only in such way as to help that disciple learn the mood of service ultimately to Krishna. The Guru does not enjoy opulent service. So they somewhat reluctantly accept it, again, as a service to Krishna, helping that living entity reconnect with their eternal Father. And Srila Prabhupada gave this injunction just as a practical example. When one offers one obeisances, the mood one must have is to pass those obeisances on to their spiritual master. And one immediately has this feeling, this sentiment, that they're not offering obeisances to me. They're offering obeisances to my spiritual master, because something that he has done is pleasing to this person, and thus they are offering pranams. That is the mood in which one takes even that service. But like that, all these different services the great devotees take, it is with reluctance, but it is done as a service to help all of us learn this mood of surrender and service. So even in the relationship between husband and wife, the husband should not be so eager for this service, but can accept it with the proper mood of trying to together make progress in devotional service. So we'll just conclude with a discussion of Rukmini's service to Krishna. Prabhupada comments on this nature and says again that I'll read the last line of the purport. The husband and wife should live in Krishna consciousness and follow in the footsteps of Lakshmi Narayan or Krishna Rukmini. In this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. Who thought peace and harmony can be within this world? Well, it is possible by following, as Prabhupada says, in the footsteps. So I thought it would be quite appropriate that we can spend a few minutes discussing what Krishna and Rukmini did. And we'll discuss a little bit from the 60th chapter of the 10th canto. It's a very beautiful chapter. Prabhupada has given a very beautiful narration of that in Krishna book. If anyone is so inspired to read that, we'll just cover a quick synopsis of it, but it is very sweet. And the verses in Srimad Bhagavatam as well, and the purports are very, very nice and sweet. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur opens his commentary on the first verse by saying that this pastime and the words of Krishna show the remarkable chaste qualities of Rukmini. So we'll see very wonderful qualities of Rukmini. And Prabhupada writes in Krishna book that Krishna's dealings with Rukmini are that of a perfect husband. So it's quite appropriate that we can discuss this pastime in the context of today's discussion of this relationship between husband and wife. So the pastime begins with Krishna. He had a desire to invoke Rukmini's mood of anger. She was always very faithfully and steadily serving Krishna, and she never expressed even the slightest of tinge of dissatisfaction. And Krishna was longing for this. And when she received the parijata flower from Narada Muni, we know that Satyabhama became, she displayed this mood of anger very strongly, and it resulted in she receiving the entire parijata tree from the heavenly planets. But Krishna was wondering, when Satyabhama received the whole tree, Rukmini didn't object. She was simply very grave and engaged in rendering her service. And so Krishna was trying to invoke this mood of anger out from her. And it's explained in this section and Prabhupada commented here, that Rukmini was personally serving Krishna, that she took the fan from the hands of the maidservant, and while Krishna was seated on a very luxurious white-colored bed, she was fanning him, and this fan had a golden handle with bedecked with jewels, and very elaborate description is given there, but that she was personally engaged in this service. It was not relegated, to others. Similarly, we see Mother Yashoda. She wanted to personally churn the butter for Krishna, her beloved Krishna. And then we have this very wonderful pastime of Damodar Leela due to that desire of Mother Yashoda. So we see that the desire of the devotee is to personally render service, not to outsource it to others. So Krishna begins to tease Rukmini to invoke this reaction. And because Krishna enjoys these different moods. You wonder why he wants to see Rukmini angry. Well, they're all pleasing to Krishna. The different moods the devotees exhibit, they're all very, very pleasing. And I'll discuss a little bit about Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's comment on that aspect of it in a moment. But so Krishna decides how I can invoke her anger. I tried with the flower and nothing happened, so let me try this way. And he begins to explain that, Rukmini, you made a mistake in selecting me to be married. And he goes on and gives all kinds of very amazing statements. He says, I am not equal to you. You are a great princess. There are many, many great kings who are ready to marry you. He said, I am, inferior to Shishupal, who had many wonderful qualities. He said, I was scared of Jarasandha, and I fled to a house within water. And it keeps going on. He says, I wanted to be a king, but I could not be a king. Even after killing Kamsa, I could not get the kingdom. As we know, he gave the kingdom to Ugrasena. And he said, I'm not a polished person. I don't have any etiquette. Normally one should be happy with only one wife, but I have 16,108 wives, and I'm still not very reliable. And like this, he goes on and on. He explains that anyone who loves me ends up in bereavement, ends up crying. Just look at all the residents of Vrindavan. The gopis love me, and what is their condition now? They are just lamenting and crying, as I've heard from devotees who've gone there. So like this, he goes on and on. He says, am I the son of Nanda Maharaj or am I the son of Vasudeva? I don't know. I'm a vagabond. And he just continues to, really show his lack of qualification for marrying her. And then he ends with a very, strong statement. He suggested, Rukmini, it's not too late. You can go pick another husband. It's okay. Now keep in mind, at this point, they had grown married children. But he's saying, it's better late than never that you go find a more qualified husband. And so like this really pierced the heart of Rukmini. And Sridhar Swami gives, great detail of each of the qualities that Krishna spoke about: his incompatibility, his fearfulness, taking shelter in the ocean, quarreling with the powerful, etc. He's only being worshipped by the beggars, he said. So he goes on and gives all these qualifications. And Rukmini, hearing this, she did not become angry. Right? One could say, how you could speak this way, or how you could insult me by saying my husband is this. But she did not become angry. But she became very, very fearful that if Krishna is speaking this way, she had never heard such words for him, that he may leave her. So out of fear of separation, not the harsh words, she became completely overwhelmed. She did not even utter a word. She became like a stick. And to explain, her head drooped down, her toenails were scratching on the floor, and she just became completely lost. And so much anxiety that she began to immediately lose so much weight, and the bangles from her hands fell off through her hands because she had become so slim and slender. And then finally, she fell down, and Shukadeva Goswami explains, like a plantain tree would be blown over by the wind. Boom! She fell straight like a stick on the ground, not understanding that Krishna was only joking, just joking. She completely fainted. Krishna, sitting on the bed, sees Rukmini fall, and he reciprocates, and he jumps off the bed, and he began to pacify her. Actually, he assumed a four-armed form, and in two arms, he raised her off the ground. One hand, he was caressing her face, and in the other hand was, gathering her hair. So he needed all four arms in service. So eager he was to render service back to his beloved Rukmini. And Krishna then began to pacify her. He is the expert in the art of pacification. He knows exactly how to reciprocate with each and every devotee. Whenever we render service to Krishna, he doesn't reciprocate with us in generalities, but actually he reciprocates with us in perfect measure to how we can become more inspired to serve. And so in this way, Krishna began to very artfully bring Rukmini back to consciousness with very consoling words and efforts. As I mentioned, four arms engaged in this service of bringing Rukmini back to consciousness. And Krishna said, hey, I was only joking. I was expecting you to counter-answer my words, but unfortunately you took them very seriously. He said, I was expecting your red lips to tremble with anger, and that you would chastise me with many words. But Krishna says, no, but you mistaken my words as a joke. And I'm sorry. Like this he continues. So Rukmini becomes pacified. And then Rukmini takes each and every one of Krishna's statements. As I said, Krishna gave many, many different statements and arguments as to why she should ultimately take a new husband. And Rukmini defeats each and every one of those statements, saying that she was the undeserving one, she was not his equal, or how, the great kings are only kings to their senses. The only real kings in this material world are the three modes of nature who control everybody. And like this, she just, destroyed each and every one of the statements by Krishna very precisely, and gives verse after verse after verse. We don't have time to read them all. I wish we did. They're so very sweet. And so at the end, after Rukmini has spoken this way, Krishna became very pleased. And he glorifies, the very chaste quality of Rukmini. Krishna said that he spoke these words only to pull out the full depth of her love for him. This was his real intent. Actually, Vishnava Chakravarti Thakur comments that the devotees reciprocate with Krishna according to how he wants. When Srimati Radharani rebukes Krishna, she does so only because it is pleasing to Krishna. She does not do it out of her own sense of unhappiness. Sometimes we see this, different moods, like Man is seemingly angry, as explained in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It is not anger, but it is a mood that is meant to please Krishna. Krishna enjoys to see these different moods. So, one question can be raised that, well, if Krishna wanted to see the mood of Rukmini angry, she did not follow. Does that, mean that, she made a mistake? And Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comments that her love was so deep that she fulfilled an even higher purpose by increasing the ecstasy of Krishna, by showing this all-encompassing love for him. Krishna is very pleased when he feels and experiences the love of his devotees. So much so that he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? Just to experience the very supreme position of Srimati Radharani. It's like that Krishna becomes very pleased. So hearing the very strong mood that Rukmini had of her love for him, that actually pleased Krishna even more than he had desired to be pleased by seeing her angry. So in this way, Rukmini actually fulfilled a higher desire of Krishna, and this is the ultimate, sign of a great devotee, their ability to please Krishna, not do what only one wants. And so Krishna ends this chapter with some, very wonderful glorifications of Rukmini. He says that even his harsh words could not shake her love for him. Her mind remained very fixed on him. In the 55th verse, he says that, in all my palaces, I can find no other wife as loving as you. And he gave her a very, prominent glorification. In the next verse, he comments that even when her brother Rukmi was killed by his own brother, Lord Balaram, she was under unbearable grief, but she did not speak even a single word out of fear of losing him. So Krishna remembered that and spoke about how her love was so strong that even at the grief of her brother being killed, she did not even utter a single word. And then finally, I just wanted to read this exact verse word for word. This is the 57th verse. It's such a sweet verse Krishna is speaking to show the extraordinary position of Rukmini. He says, quote, "When you sent the messenger with your most confidential plan, and yet I delayed going to you, you began to see the whole world as void and wanted to quit your body, which could never have been given to anyone but me. May this greatness of yours remain with you always. I can do nothing to reciprocate except joyfully thank you for your devotion." This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead saying, I can do nothing to reciprocate except joyfully thank you for your devotion. So you can see that this love of Rukmini and her extraordinarily dedicated service, it invoked such an extraordinary appreciation for Krishna. We can see Krishna's love and service back to Rukmini, even to the point of bringing out 4 arms to render service. And so, as Prabhupada said, this is a wonderful example for us to live by. So, in conclusion, and the practical application for us is that the key to successful life is following the Vedic principles, and they are proven and perfect. And in the Vedic principle of marriage, the key to a successful marriage is it must be centered around Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada says, divorce is not an option. The best of all marriage counseling advice is chant more. I heard one somebody giving a class. He says, if you feel inclined to get in a fight with your spouse, just sit in front of each other, stare at each other, and chant one round. If after chanting one round you still want to fight, then fight. But just chant and then see. It's kind of a nice, speaking a little bit in jest. But the point is that, the key to a successful life is to bring Krishna into the center. If husband thinks he is the center, if wife thinks she is the center, there will be inevitable conflict that will pale in comparison, or that will make Kurukshetra seem very insignificant. That level of conflict will come. But if husband and wife know who is the real center, it is Krishna, and know how both husband and wife can work together nicely in this mood of service, then one can find real happiness and perfection of life. And as Prabhupada said, in this way, peace and harmony can be possible within this world. So this is some discussion on this very nice set of verses in the 4th canto, 23rd chapter, verses 23, 24, and 25. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grahantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any comments or corrections, clarifications, discussions?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. Very nicely presented. I don't have any questions, but I request all the devotees on the call, they can go ahead if they have any questions or comments for Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for the very, very beautiful class, especially the examples of Rukmini. That was very beautifully chosen and beautifully dealt with. Thank you for bringing out those verses, Prabhu. The class was very beautiful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dharma Pranam, all glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. A very sensitive topic, but you handled it so well, beautifully, and presented it in a very nice way, giving us all examples. I know you did mention that the key to successful relationship is also centering it around Krishna consciousness. But I know, and you also mentioned in the middle of your lecture, which is still keeping me a little bit confused, that like the husband serving Guru and Krishna and wife serving the husband. Now and then we talked about the qualifications for each of them. They should have these ideal qualifications, which may be possible, I'm sure, with many, but just in case when the qualifications are not met up by the wife too, and probably also might be not met by the husband, in such a kind of a situation, where does one stand? How could you please throw some light on that?
Yeah, I mean, Prabhupada gave very practical advice there, that this principle should be maintained. And if, let's say in the case of, husband is not coming to Krishna consciousness so well, wife should still render service to him, and carry on her Krishna consciousness in a way, that doesn't become destructive to the relationship, and ultimately rely on the mercy of Krishna to help, bring, mercy to that living entity. And so, in that case, it can be that way, or vice versa. If the wife is not, yet ready to take, to this process and has, other desires, the husband is encouraged to, render service to Guru and Krishna, yet, be practical and, and have realistic expectations of the other in their position in spiritual life. So, if one applies the devotional qualities to this situation, things become very, easy to navigate. If one remains tolerant, one remains very, forgiving, loving, caring, broad-minded, all these devotional qualities. You apply it to that situation, it will ease any potential for conflict. But this service is there. I spoke of the goal of what both should aspire for, but it doesn't mean unless one is a pure devotee, oh, I'm not serving my husband, he's not a pure devotee. That's not the purport of this. The point is that the husband should feel the need to qualify to receive service, and that should not be greedy for such service. But the wife should not be thinking, oh, he's a rascal. Don't you know he watches cricket still? I don't want to. I don't have to serve him. No, that's not the point. The husband should be very tolerant. If wife is not, we gave the supreme example of Rukmini and things, and holds the wife up to that standard. That is an unfair approach. So the husband should be very grateful for whatever service can be rendered. Again, not to him specifically, but to support the service of Guru and Krishna. And so both sides have to be practical and realistic and tolerant of what is there in order to achieve a success. So when I spoke of those qualities, they are spoken from the perspective of not the other side, but the individual introspectively of how one should think about it. But we should not think of the other side in that way. Does that clarify? Hopefully that.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah, one to be more introspective, and yeah, that makes more sense, probably. I think.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
then that would.
Yeah,
Rather than try to pass judgment on the other person, first see what one needs to do, self-improvement. And I think that would carry on and help. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for helping me.
Husband should work towards their own purity and wife should work for their own chaste service, but not vice versa. Husband should not look to the chaste service of wife, and the wife should not look to the purity of husband. Right? One should look again to one's own position and keep the broader context in mind. Just chant nicely together and all will be well. If we center around that simple end formula, just chant nicely together and everything else will take care of itself. You don't need to complicate the principle any further than that.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. It's really helped. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Then Pranam. Thank you so much for the wonderful class as always. I have two questions. One, I believe most of us on the call are in Grihastha. So when we listen to mentors or acharyas, that are coming from Grihastha, it feels obvious, and even from Prabhupada's principle, that we really do not have to change anything in our life from our karmic journey, and we have to just bring Krishna in the center. And we all try to do that in our own situation with our limited abilities. But when you listen to some people, some of the other mentors who have really dedicated their lives to Krishna consciousness entirely, there is also a feel that comes in that what I'm doing is really not equivalent to that perfection where somebody gives themselves totally to Krishna consciousness. Because in Grihastha, we are taking care of our children, we are doing our jobs, we are doing so many other things. Although we do bring Krishna in the center, there's more of a karma mishra bhakti rather than pure bhakti there. I mean, keeping in mind that we try to do our sadhana to our best abilities, even then it feels a lot of times that, you know, when in my own situation, when I listen to some of the brahmacharis and you know, some of the other acharyas out there, that, you know, what we are doing in grihastha may not be entirely what is what gives the perfection. Is it really true that, you know, people in grihastha can hope to be still can hope to attain this perfection in this lifetime? Or, you know, do you have instances where, you know, people have, you know, gone, you know, have had situations towards the end of their lives where, you know, there are clues where they are going to go back to Godhead? Or do they really have to come back for, you know, many more lifetimes to get to that level?
Yeah, there's, in our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, we have extraordinary examples of Grihastha ashram being shown to be powerful, and we have none other to look for than Bhaktivinoda Thakur. You know, who's considered the seventh Goswami, who revived the entire movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which had been lost after a couple hundred years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left. The pure philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had been lost, and he became so powerful that he revived the entire movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In what ashram? As a grihastha, having a high-flying job. He was a magistrate in the British government. He had 9 or more children. So, yet he wrote exhaustively. He was an empowered, obviously he came straight from the spiritual world. But in that Grihastha ashram, he showed how one can be extraordinarily powerful. And if you look at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? He came to teach Krishna consciousness. He came to give the ultimate mercy. And what did he do? He instructed Lord Nityananda that you leave Jagannath Puri. All the devotees were so anxious to be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Puri after he had taken sannyas. And he said, you marry, you enter Grihastha ashram, and you teach devotional service to those in the Grihastha ashram. Why he did that? Because the Grihastha ashram is so potent for the ability to perfect in Krishna consciousness. So you can see that there are, you know, great examples in our history, and there are great examples in our current movement. You know, there are great, you know, spiritual masters. You know, I just pick one. You know, Vaisheshika Prabhu, his wife. You know, amazingly rendering service, and there are so many others. So the potential is there if applied correctly. And just know that external appearances is not all what it seems. You know, one may be in a certain, you know, colored dress living full time in the temple, but what is the consciousness of such a person, right? It may appear as though they are rendering great service. And, you know, Srila Prabhupada expressed this sentiment to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He wrote him a letter just a week or two before Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left. And he said, because I'm engrossed in Grihastha ashram and busy in my pharmacy life, I have not been able to render direct service to you like many of your other disciples who are constantly engaging in service to you. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wrote a letter back to him, to Srila Prabhupada, and said that your service to me will be extraordinary. I'm not quoting exactly, but by spreading this message to the West. So, you know, the types of service that we do are not based on necessarily proximity. That point he was making to Srila Prabhupada at that point, that service, you know, just because you couldn't be with me and serving me day in and day out doesn't mean, you know, you cannot render extraordinary service. So whatever ashram we are in, we have the ability and potential to perfect and also to imperfect. No ashram is perfect. You can be in, another ashram and have complete full of challenges and difficulties as well. Right? So each ashram is geared in a way, but we have to follow the principles of that ashram. And that's why in studying the pastimes of Prithu Maharaj, we see how he perfectly lived this Grihastha ashram. In the midst of all the opulences, was detached from them. And we see the relationship being discussed here. So it is a very potent ashram to achieve perfection, but one must apply the principles of it very nicely, and thus one can achieve perfection, as we see in our own sampradaya over and over and over again. Many look at Panchatattva. Advaita Acharya was a Grihastha. Srivas Thakur was a Grihastha. Lord Nityananda was a Grihastha. Right? So we see there, Grihasthas are throughout our history to give us proof positive it can happen.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thanks for the wonderful explanation. I had another question, but I think you answered that too. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, now in this verse we were talking about service rights to and service wife serving the husband serving the wife. Prabhuji, yesterday we were reading 13th chapter, and in the translation it says, Prabhu, where freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home and the rest.
Hare Krishna, but the phone was breaking a little bit. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, Prabhuji, now here today we were talking, right, about wife serving the husband, husband serving the wife, and Krishna we have to put Krishna in the center. Prabhuji, the other day we were reading the 13th chapter, and in the purport, in the translation of 8 to 12 verse, it says freedom from entanglement with children, wife and home and the rest.
Yes.
So, how do we understand, Prabhuji, this one?
Yeah. So Prabhupada comments on that in the freedom that, and if you read that purport very carefully, he uses the word overly. So one should not be overly attached to wife, children, husband, family. And so the point is that what is the meaning of overly attached? So the relationship that exists is that we are all part and parcel of Krishna and his eternal children. So in the relationship between husband and wife, one sees each other not as eternal husbands and wives, but joined in this ashram working together to serve Krishna. So there's attachment to seeing the wife successful, there's attachment to seeing the husband successful in their spiritual journey. But there's not a bodily attachment that consumes one. And we see this, where one becomes so attached to family that they never enter Vanaprastha ashram, right? That they become so absorbed in maintaining the children and maintaining the grandchildren, and sometimes the great-grandchildren, that they never take to their own, process of self-realization. So this is the over-attachment. The one should be attached and loving to all, but the over-attachment to the bodily aspects of those relationships is what is being referred to there. And so that's the discussion, and that's the, there's a fine line, not a fine line I should say, but there's a distinction even in the marriage relationship. You're detached, but you're still loving and caring, and how to carry those in parallel, right? So there's a love and a care, but it's on the spiritual plane. So that's what's being referred to in that discussion around detachment from family life. Sometimes that can be very controversial if one reads that, too literally, and that you take. But if you read the purports and read Prabhupada's commentaries on it, he's speaking about over-attachment. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Perfect, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Prabhu, one more question. Yeah, that's it, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, I have one other question that came up as you were explaining the answer to the last question. So, you mentioned about Vanaprastha ashram. Vedic ways suggest the Chaturva ashram, and Vanaprastha ashram was defined by, after a certain age of 50 years and all that stuff, which is sometimes impractical for different people in Kali Yuga. But on the other side, it also seems like they were the prescriptions given for attaining Vaikuntha, because Archie or Queen Archie or who was Lakshmi or any other person that leaves the body and goes back to the spiritual world that is described in Bhagavatam, they more like Vaikuntha. It's understood to be Vaikuntha because Vaikuntha and never mentioned as far as I understand. So, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave this for all sorts of people. So, do you really believe that these things of which is are to be followed in a similar, prescribed way, even to attain the perfection of Gaudiya Sampradaya also, or is it different?
Mataji, can you repeat just the end of your question? I was getting a little bit of feedback. I'm sorry. Just the end piece of it.
Yes, Prabhu. So the question is, the Grihasthashram, Vanaprasthashram, the definition given by Bhagavatam, whatever is given, I understand it's more to attain the perfection of life, which is believed to be Vaikuntha. Most of the instances there wherein people go back to the spiritual world, whether it's Queen Archie or Dhruva Maharaj and his mother and all those instances that are described in Bhagavatam, they quote Vaikuntha rather than Golok Vrindavan, which is barely described in Bhagavatam. So, but we have this unique opportunity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, which gives us this extraordinary bonus of going back to Golok Vrindavan. But does that really require the Vedic principles to be followed? Because the whole concept of Bhakti Yoga is, it sounds different from Vedic principles. Staying where you are, doing everything you are doing, but, bringing Krishna into the center. Because Vanaprasthashram, again, all these definitions of Vanaprasthashram, Sannyasashram, this may not, this may not be practical for all of us depending on our situations. So, what do you comment about that?
Sorry. So our couple comments on it. So the Vedic principles, everything we're doing are within the category of Vedic principles. So it is not that to go to Vaikuntha is one Vedic principle, but to go to Goloka is not, or different. So they are just different gradations within the spiritual realm that are all enjoined within the Vedic principles. So, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as you nicely said, gave us this very special mercy by opening our eyes to the potential and the possibility of returning to the ultimate realm of Krishna Loka, which is explained, very elaborately in Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, and why, Parikshit Maharaj asked to hear all of this in great detail. Because to inspire, and have the opportunity for all of us to become inspired by the activities of Krishna in his eternal home. So it is all within there. And the Vanaprastha ashram is not a realm of just achieving a certain spiritual perfection. So now the Vanaprastha ashram that we're seeing here, remember, was performed in a very different age. And so, yes, the ability, the potency of us to perform as explained here is not practical. standing neck deep in cold water in the middle of the forest, or surrounded by 5 types of fire and eating dried fruits and berries. Yes, that is not practical in our current condition. But the Vanaprastha ashram is still very practical. So then we must understand from our acharyas how it is to be applied in today's realm. And as explained, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur talked about how Vanaprastha ashram should be followed, in essence, by living in the temple. So once one's children are raised to an age where they're independent, one can retire and render service in the temple. And so one doesn't have to go literally to the forest and follow for that. But there is an application of Vanaprastha ashram that's relevant today that can open one to the ultimate realm. Now, whether one goes to Vaikuntha or Krishna Loka is based on one's desire, where one wants to go. Right? So that is based just on one, not based on whether one follows Varnashram Dharma or not. Again, Varnashram Dharma is simply a means by which to create an opportunity for spiritual life to succeed. But you still must do the work. So entering Vanaprastha doesn't mean you'll achieve perfection unless you're engaged in chanting of the holy names. Right? So the ashram itself, the Vanaprastha ashram, is just a means, but we do have to see the practical application of it today in today's realm, which is given to us by our acharyas. Thankfully, we don't have to endure such austerities. The only austerity we have to endure, chant our rounds very nicely and sincerely. That is the only austerity I shouldn't say only, but it is the primary austerity. And yet sometimes that becomes difficult. But that is the great mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just chant, just chant, just chant.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Anything else?
Does anybody have any questions or comments for Prabhuji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad Pranam, Hare Krishna Srila Prabhuji. Very beautiful class, Prabhuji, and very nice examples and very nicely like of Krishna and thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhuji.
So if there are no more questions or comments for Prabhuji, I think we can end the call here. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the wonderful class and question answer session. We look forward to your more classes, Prabhuji, in future. Let's pay our obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and Prabhuji. Mancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhyaivacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Grandhara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, and His Grace Nitya Krishna Prabhuji ki jai. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.